When I was 9, Mom said tears are for weak little boys, then locked me in the laundry room while my sister got bedtime stories. I learned to sleep beside the dryer. 20 years later, she asked to hold my son. I said, "You never held me." The answer is no. My name is Joel Hartwell. I am 30 years old. I work nights at a children's hospital in Nashville, Tennessee. 3 years on the pediatric floor. I do 12-hour shifts, and I go home at 7 in the morning, and I make coffee, and I sleep until 3 in the afternoon, and then I start again. I don't raise my voice at work, not because I was trained not to, not because of policy, just how I operate. Children in a hospital are already scared. A loud voice doesn't help anyone think more clearly. So I learned a long time ago to keep everything level, everything slow, everything quiet. Patients respond to calm. Families respond to calm. I keep it that way because it works. August was born in February. He is 3 months old. He weighs 12 pounds and 4 ounces as of his last checkup, and he has his mother's nose, and he makes a specific sound when he is thinking about whether or not to cry that I have already learned to recognize from the other room. His mother is Priya Anand. She works in pediatric physical therapy at the same hospital, different floor. We are not together. We have been not together for 2 years, and we handle it the way two people handle something when they are both professionals who care more about a child than about being right. She takes August on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and every other weekend. I take the rest. We eat dinner together at the kitchen table every Sunday when the schedule allows. It is a specific and quiet arrangement, and it works because neither of us is performing anything for the other. Priya knew my history before August was born. I told her when she needed to know. She listened. She did not make a face. She said okay and asked one question. And then we talked about something else. When my mother's name came up later, Priya simply said she would not be bringing August around anyone I hadn't cleared. Not as a statement, just as a fact about how things were going to be. That was all. I need to tell you about the laundry room first. I was 9 years old. It was a Wednesday night in November, and I had come inside from the backyard because I had fallen off the back fence trying to reach the neighbor's apple tree. The fall was maybe 5 feet. I landed on my left side. My elbow was bleeding through my sleeve, and my chin had caught the edge of a rock, and I was crying by the time I got to the back door. My mother was at the kitchen table. She looked at me when I came in. She looked at my elbow and my chin. She looked at my face. She said, "Tears are for weak little boys." She said it calmly. The way you say something you believe so completely that you don't need to raise your voice about it. Then she pointed at the door at the end of the hallway and told me to go sit in the laundry room until I was done. The laundry room was small. There was a plastic chair in the corner that nobody ever used. The dryer was running because it ran most evenings. I sat on the floor beside it. The floor was cold, and the dryer was warm on my left side, and I could hear my sister Laurel getting her bedtime story through the wall. My mother's voice was soft for that. I could not make out the words, just the rhythm of them. I sat there until the dryer stopped. Then I got up, washed my elbow in the bathroom sink, and went to bed. I want to be clear that this was not an isolated incident. The laundry room was a recurring location. It was where I went when I cried, and sometimes when I was upset in a way that did not involve crying, but that my mother found inconvenient. I learned to stop going there by learning to stop giving her the trigger. This took approximately 2 years. By age 11, I had largely resolved the question of visible emotion in my mother's presence. The second incident that matters is the school play. I was 11. I had 3 lines. The play was about the American Revolution, and I was a British soldier who got captured and then had a speech about the nature of loyalty. I had practiced the speech in the bathroom mirror for 2 weeks. The play was on a Thursday evening. My mother did not come. My father did not come. I walked home alone afterward in November and let myself in with the key I kept in my jacket pocket. Nobody asked about it the next morning. The third incident, I was 14, and there was a class trip to Washington, D.C. that cost $240, including transportation and lodging. I asked my mother if I could go. She said money was tight. 2 weeks later, she paid $420 for Laurel's summer music camp without discussion. I did not go on the class trip. I did not mention the difference. I had already started keeping a kind of internal record without knowing that is what I was doing. The fourth incident, I was 16. There was a neighbor named Rosalind Carter who lived 3 houses down and who came by for coffee on Saturday mornings sometimes. One Saturday I was in the hallway putting on my shoes and I heard my mother say, "He's the easy one. Never needs anything." She said it with something in her voice that I can only describe as satisfaction, like she had accomplished something. Like my not needing anything was a product of her good work rather than a product of what the laundry room had taught me. The fifth incident, I was 19. I had been accepted to a nursing program at a state university 4 hours from home. I had applied without telling anyone. I showed my mother the acceptance letter on a Tuesday morning. She was on the phone. She looked at the letter, she said good. Then she went back to the phone. I did not need anything from her by that point. I want to be precise about this. I did not need anything from her because I had been carefully and consistently taught that needing things was a weakness, and the lesson had taken. There is one shelf in my hall closet. On it sits a cardboard box, not large. I did not keep it for sentiment. It is simply a box of things from childhood that did not get thrown away during the various moves. Inside it, a birth certificate. One photograph from Christmas, blurry, me at the edge of the frame. A third-grade report card with straight A's in reading, and a blank line where a parent's signature was supposed to go. I have never counted my sister Laurel's baby album, but I know it is on a shelf at my mother's house, and I know it is thick. I noticed this once during a visit years ago, and I did not say anything about it. I simply filed it away with everything else. My Aunt Brenda called on a Wednesday afternoon in April. I was home. August was asleep in the back room. I was eating lunch at the kitchen counter. Brenda is my mother's younger sister. She is 54 years old, and she is not a bad person. She does what Sandra asks because that is how she understands love, and she has been doing it for 54 years, and she does not know any other way. I have no anger toward Brenda. I have only ever had clarity about what she is. She was cheerful. She said she'd heard about the baby. Said everyone was so happy for me. Said my mother would love to come meet him, whenever I was ready, whenever would be a good time. Said it the way someone says something they have been rehearsed to say, which is to say, warm at the surface, structured underneath. I thanked her. I said I'd think about it and be in touch. I hung up. August made a sound in the other room. I went to check. He was fine. He was doing the thing where he is deciding whether to be upset about something and then decides not to be. I stood in the doorway of his room and looked at him for a while. The room smelled like the specific detergent Priya had picked out. There was a mobile above the crib that she had assembled, and I had watched her assemble it, and it had small wooden planets, and when the air moved, they turned slowly. I went back to the kitchen and finished my lunch. 11 days passed. I worked my shifts. I came home at 7 in the morning and made coffee and slept. I picked up August on Thursday and kept him through the weekend. I gave him a bath on Friday night and he grabbed my thumb during it, the way he had started doing, and I let him hold it until he was ready to stop. I called Laurel on Friday evening after August was asleep. She picked up on the second ring. I told her about Brenda's call. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Of course she used Aunt Brenda." Then she said, "She never updated her picture of you've been a grown man for 12 years, and she's still managing the 9-year-old in the laundry room." I said I knew. Laurel said, "You already know what you're going to do." I said I did. We talked for a few more minutes about her kids, about a project she was working on, about nothing in particular. Then we said goodnight. After the call, I opened the hall closet and took down the box. I set it on the kitchen counter and opened it. Birth certificate. Christmas photograph. Blurry, me at the edge. 3rd grade report card. Straight A's in reading. Blank signature line. I looked at it for a moment. Then I closed the box and put it back. I have thought a great deal over the years about what my mother believed she was doing. I want to be fair about this, because fairness is the only way to understand something completely. She was not performing cruelty. She had a philosophy. She believed that boys needed to be hardened. She believed that comfort was a form of weakness, and that weakness was a form of failure. And she believed she was sparing me from failure by denying me comfort. She said this out loud, in those terms, on several occasions. She had a reason for every incident. The laundry room, boys who cry in public, will be destroyed by the world. So better to learn now. The school play, he needs to understand the world won't always show up for him. The class trip, he needs to learn to manage disappointment. The neighbor's comment, she meant it as pride. She believed it. That is the important part. She was not a villain who knew she was doing harm. She was a woman with a philosophy she had never once questioned, and she applied it consistently and without malice. And she was completely wrong about all of it, and the results of her being wrong are sitting in a cardboard box on a shelf in my hall closet. I tried to understand this for a long time. Not to forgive it, just to understand the shape of it. By 30, I understood it completely. The problem for my mother was that the lesson took. She taught me not to need things. She taught me that needing things was weakness. She taught me to function alone in a closed room and to be fine. And I learned all of it. I learned it so thoroughly that by the time I was an adult, I could sit with almost anything and feel nothing visible on the surface. I could work a 12-hour pediatric shift and hold a child's hand while they cried, and keep my own face completely calm. I could receive news that another person would need 3 days to process and simply put it away and go to work. She built that in me. And now she wanted something from me, and the exact architecture she had built in me was the thing that made her want land without any effect at all. I called Brenda back 2 days later. I thanked her again for calling. I told her I appreciated it. I told her I would reach out to my mother directly when I was ready, and that she didn't need to relay anything further. I said it warmly. I said it the way I say things at work when I am communicating a boundary to a family member who does not yet understand that a boundary is being communicated. Brenda said, of course. Of course. She understood completely. Then, trying to be helpful, she said, Sandra had been hoping to come to Nashville. Had been thinking about it for a while. She had me call you, Brenda said, so it wouldn't seem like she was pushing. She didn't know she was telling me the strategy. She thought she was softening it. She thought she was helping. I thanked her. I said I understood. I said goodbye. I sat with what Brenda had just told me for a moment. My mother had known a direct call would not land well. So she had run the ask through a relay, through a warm voice, through someone I had no grievance with. And once the relay had been made and I hadn't said yes, she was already rewriting my non-answer as hesitation rather than refusal. She was giving me time to process. She was being patient. She was, in her own understanding of events, being generous. I want to say something here that I have never said to anyone and that I am still not entirely proud of. When Brenda's first call came, I drafted a response 3 times. Not a call. A text. I wrote it out, thought about it, deleted it. The first version was explanatory. Too many words. The second version was shorter, but still had the shape of justification in it. The third version was 1 sentence. I deleted that one too. Some answers don't need to be explained to the person who already knows what they did. I did not send any, and I want you to understand, Sandra is not waiting for me to finish processing. She is not giving me space. She is in Knoxville right now telling herself that I just need more time. And she has booked a drive to Nashville, and she is going to show up at my door because in 30 years she has never once updated the picture she has of me. And she still believes, genuinely believes, that when she arrives, I will open the door. She is going to find out that the picture is wrong. Stay with me for this next part, because what happens at my front door is the part of this story I have been carrying for 3 years, and I want to tell it the right way. There is a wall in the pediatric unit where I work. It has been there since before I started. Someone began it years ago, and it has continued because of its own momentum. It is a wall of Polaroid photographs. Every photograph is a discharge day. A parent and a child, taken on the day the child goes home. There are hundreds of them now. Some of the children in the photos are wearing hospital gowns. Some are in street clothes. Some are being carried. Some are walking, and the parent is beside them with a hand on their back. I have walked past this wall approximately 600 times in 3 years. I have never mentioned it to anyone. That same week, there was a boy on my floor named Marcus, 8 years old, respiratory issue, 4 days with us. On his 3rd day, he was scared in the specific way children are scared when they are trying not to show it, and I recognized it because I had been that child. And so I sat with him for a few minutes on my break, and I talked to him about the machines and what each sound meant and what his body was doing. He was better the next day, not because of what I said, just because the body does what it does. On his discharge day, Darren Osai, my charge nurse, 14 years on the floor, was standing near the wall with his clipboard. He was watching the boy's mother sign the discharge paperwork. He said to me, not turning around, "The ones who grew up having to be fine, they're always the hardest to read. Doesn't mean nothing's there." He was talking about the boy. He was not talking about me. He was making an observation about a patient. I took my notepad out of my pocket and wrote it in the margin. I did not explain why. Meanwhile, on Thursday of that week, my mother called Brenda again. She asked if I had responded. Brenda told her I said I'd be in touch when I was ready. My mother told Brenda I just needed time to process. My mother told Brenda that I had always had difficulty with emotional things, that I kept too much inside, that she was worried about me carrying this alone. Brenda believed her. Brenda has always believed her. My mother booked the drive for Sunday. She told Brenda she was giving me space. She drove 4 hours south on a Sunday morning with empty hands because she had decided that arriving without a gift would read as humility. She had thought about it. She had a plan. I drove to Chattanooga on Saturday with August in the car seat. Laurel lives 5 minutes east of Nashville. She has 2 kids of her own, 7 and 4, and her house is loud in the specific way of a house where children are comfortable. There was artwork on the refrigerator, 6 or 7 pieces, overlapping. Her 4-year-old had drawn something that was either a horse or a building, and it had been assigned a place of honor in the center, held up by 4 magnets. Laurel had written the date and her daughter's name on it in marker. I stood in the kitchen looking at the refrigerator while August was on the floor working on a toy. Laurel handed me a coffee and leaned against the counter and said, "You look like you're doing math." I told her I was thinking about the box in my closet. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I had my own version. Mine was different. You didn't know, because I didn't know how to tell you. And I think I was afraid that if I told you it would make yours worse, somehow." I said I had always assumed her childhood was different. That I had not asked because I didn't want to add to what she was carrying. She said, "We both learned not to need things. She just doesn't know it worked on both of us." I looked at the refrigerator. I said, "She's coming to..." Laurel said, "I know." "Then you already know what you're going to say." I did. I had known it for 3 years. I had known it since a fishing dock in South Carolina with my father, 3 years before he died, in a conversation I had never told anyone about until that afternoon in Laurel's kitchen. I told Laurel about the fishing trip. She listened. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "He knew." It was not a question. I said he knew. She said, "And you never told him it was enough." I said I hadn't known if it was. She picked up her coffee and looked out the window. After a while, she said, "I think it was enough. I think that's actually all he had." August grabbed the leg of my chair and pulled himself to standing, and then looked very pleased about it. I put my hand out, and he grabbed my finger and held on. The fishing trip was 3 years before my father died. He died 14 months after. He was 61 years old, and his heart had been telling him something for years that he had chosen not to listen to. And then one February it stopped telling him and started simply stopping. I drove to South Carolina alone in the spring of that year, before the cardiac events began. I did not tell my mother I was going. I booked a cabin near a lake, and I called my father and told him I had a few days off and asked if he wanted to fish. He said yes. He did not ask why I had not included my mother. I did not explain. We drove to the lake on the first morning. We set up on a dock. The water was flat, and the light came in at a low angle through the pines, and neither of us said very much for the first hour and a half. My father was not a complicated man. He was a man who had made choices across 30 years and had convinced himself that each one was reasonable in the moment, and by the time the accumulation of reasonable choices had formed into something unreasonable, it was too late to go back through all of them and fix what needed fixing. I understood this about him. I had understood it for a long time. He set his rod down on the dock beside him. He looked at the water. He said, "You turned out better than I deserved." I did not respond. I let it sit on the water with everything else. He did not add to it. He did not apologize with more words. He did not explain what he meant or list the things he should have done differently. He said the one true thing, and then he picked his rod back up, and we fished for another 2 hours, and then we drove back to the cabin. He died 14 months later. My mother thinks I did not visit during that period. She has a version of that year in which I was absent. In her version, I did not come during the cardiac procedure. In her version, my father and I were not close in the way that two people are close when they have sat on a dock together and said the only true thing available to them. She does not know about the dock. She does not know about the one sentence. She does not know that I left South Carolina having said goodbye to my father in the only way we knew how, which was quietly and without ceremony. He is not here anymore. There is no accountability coming from that side. There is only what I know, and what I know is that neither of my parents protected me, and that I protected myself, and that I am still here. I drove home from Laurel's house on Saturday evening, with August asleep in the back seat. I carried him inside without waking him and put him in the crib, and stood in the doorway for a moment listening to him breathe. The wooden planets turned slowly in the air from the vent. I went to bed at 9 o'clock. My mother would be driving in the morning. I slept without difficulty. I was in the kitchen when Priya brought August over at 10. She came in through the back and handed him to me and said my mother's car was at the end of the block. She said it the way she says things, clearly, without editorializing. I said I knew. She said, "August and I will be in the back." I nodded. She took August and went down the hall. I heard the car pull into the driveway a few minutes later. I heard the door. I gave it a moment. Then I walked to the front door and opened it, and stepped onto the porch and pulled the door closed behind me. My mother was standing at the base of the porch steps. She had come with nothing, no bag, no gift, no anything. She had decided that empty hands read as humility. She had rehearsed this. I could see the rehearsal in how she was standing. She looked older than the last time I had seen her. She had driven 4 hours, and she was tired from it. She was 57 years old and standing at the base of her son's porch steps, and I want to be fair, she had done a hard thing to get here. She believed she was doing the right thing. That has always been the problem. She smiled when she saw me. She said, "Joel." I said, "Mom." She said she had heard about August. She said she had wanted to come and see him. She said she just wanted to meet him, just to hold him for a minute. She didn't need to stay long. She knew I was busy. She just wanted to see her grandson. I let her finish. She looked at the door behind me. She waited for me to open it. I said, "The answer is no." She blinked. She recalibrated. She said she wasn't asking for much. She said she had driven 4 hours. She said she was his grandmother. That was just a fact. That wasn't something that could be revoked. And she knew we had our differences. But August was innocent in all of this. And was she really going to be kept from her own grandchild? I waited. She tried the pivot. She said, "Your father would have wanted." She stopped herself. She knew before it landed that it was wrong. She looked at me. She was looking for something she could use. A crack. A softening. The 9-year-old who sat beside the dryer. She said, "You were always so strong. I thought that meant you were okay." There it was. The admission and the reduction and the warmth. All in one sentence. I thought your strength was your nature, not my instruction. I thought surviving meant you were fine. I thought the lesson not showing meant the lesson wasn't there. She looked at my hands, both at my sides. She looked at my face. She said, "I don't understand you." She said it like a genuine statement, not as an accusation, not as manipulation, as actual incomprehension. In 30 years, she had never once said anything to me that I believed was entirely true. And then she said that, and it was the truest thing she had ever said. I said, "You never held me." The answer is no. She looked at my hands again. She was looking for the boy who used to go quiet in closed rooms. She was looking for something to engage with. Her whole operating system required me to be activated, to be angry or guilty or pleading, because those were the states she knew how to manage. I was none of those things. She stood there for a moment longer. Then she turned and walked back to her car. I stood on the porch until the car backed out of the driveway. Then I went inside. Priya was at the kitchen table. August was in her lap. She looked up when I came in. She said, "August is awake." I said I could see that. She stood up and handed him to me. He grabbed my collar, and I held the back of his head the way you hold it when they are 3 months old, and the neck is still working on things. Priya put her hand briefly on my arm. Then she went to the counter and poured herself a glass of water. Nobody said anything else. If you are still here, I want to say something directly. I am not telling you this story because I want you to understand my mother. I am not telling it because I want you to feel sorry for me. I am telling it because I spent a long time thinking there was something I needed from her before I could be done. A conversation. An acknowledgement. Some version of her understanding what she did and saying it back to me in words. I was wrong about that. The acknowledgement was never going to come in a form I could use, and the thing I was waiting for her to give me was something I had already given myself, quietly, over 30 years, without noticing. If you have been waiting for something like that from someone who built you to not need it, I want you to hear this part specifically. Stay for what comes next. Because what happens after she drives away is the part that took the longest to understand. Brenda called 2 weeks later. She said she was just checking in. She asked how I was doing. She said my mother wasn't doing well with things, that she was struggling, that she kept saying, "I just needed more time." I said I knew. Brenda was quiet for a moment. She said, "Is more time going to change anything?" I said no. The longest pause of the conversation. Brenda said she understood. She did not call. 6 weeks after the visit, Laurel texted me. She said Sandra had told cousin Rebecca that I was processing my grief over Dad and would come around when I was ready. I read the text. I did not respond to it. 20 minutes later, Laurel sent another text. It was a single period. I sent one back. My mother is in Knoxville. She is still waiting. She has built a narrative in which I am not done yet, in which I am in a phase, in which the correct amount of time and patience on her part will eventually produce the son she believes she raised. She does not have a version of events in which the door is simply closed. She has never encountered a version of me that she could not eventually manage. She will encounter it every time she tries. 8 months later. August is almost a year old. He has opinions now. Specific ones. He has an opinion about the wooden spoon, and about the mobile above his crib, and about a particular stuffed bear that Priya brought over one Tuesday, and that has become non-negotiable. He communicates these opinions clearly and without ambiguity. I am still on nights. I picked up a weekend program at the hospital, teaching infant CPR to new parents. It took 3 months to get approved. I run it on Saturday mornings, 6 parents at a time, in a conference room on the 2nd floor. It is a small thing. It is a thing I thought was worth doing. My mother sent a card in September. No note inside. Just a photograph of flowers, cut from a magazine or printed from somewhere. No signature. I left it on the kitchen counter for a week. Then I recycled it. She is still in Knoxville. Still waiting, according to Laurel. She has not called directly. She is working on a version of this where she is the patient one, the one giving space, the one doing everything right, and simply waiting for me to be ready. She will wait a long time. I do not think about the front porch very much. I think about it less each month. What I think about more is a Tuesday evening in October-August, about 9 months old. Priya brought him over for dinner. We made pasta and ate at the kitchen table, while August sat in the high chair and worked on a piece of bread with the focused intensity he brings to all tasks involving food. After dinner, Priya washed the dishes and I dried them, and then we did August's bedtime together. She read. I sat on the floor beside the crib. After he was asleep, we stayed in the room for a few minutes without talking. The mobile turned. The wooden planets moved in the small current from the vent. August's hand was curled around the rail of the crib. Then we went back to the kitchen, and she got her jacket and said goodnight, and I locked the door after her. I went back to August's room. He was still asleep. I sat down in the chair in the corner, and I opened the book Priya had left on the nightstand, and I read to him in a low voice, all the way to the last page, even though he could not hear me, even though it made no practical difference. I read it because someone should have. August did not ask to be born into the middle of my history. He arrived, and the history was already there. And what I owe him is the version of it that doesn't get passed down. If someone in your life taught you that needing things was weakness, I want you to notice something. They were wrong. And the evidence is that you are still here, which means part of you never believed them entirely. August is almost a year old. He has never once been asked to be easy.